Do you believe that this country, though, is on track or will meet the obligations as spelled out through that act? And how difficult is it, or how can you look at Canadians and stand by a government that will not meet those objectives? I can't find anybody from the outside doing analysis who is saying that based on what they see at this moment in time, we are on track to meet anything before 2050.
Well, first of all, I mean, just saying net zero by 2050 is the refuge of the climate denier, because it means you don't have to do anything.
That's what the Liberals are saying right now.
But that's not what we're saying. And I think Minister de Bruzen actually said today that they are striving to achieve the objectives for the 2030 number. Obviously, they need to come forward with a plan as to how that's going to be done. But let's be honest. I mean, it was always going to be a stretch to get to the 40% number. I mean, when we actually developed the detailed climate plan when I was there as environment minister, we got to 36% in looking at everything. And we said, okay, we're going to need to actually do more and figure out different ways over the course of the next number of years to try to get to the 40. We are living in an environment which is obviously a bit different with all of the challenges that we've got with the United States. I think Canadians expect, and I think the government understands and supports the need for us to continue to have climate action and to take substantive climate action. But it obviously has to be in the context of the circumstances we find ourselves right now with President Trump and the United States.
You said in March of this year, in the middle of that economic turmoil, to oil and gas CEOs that scrapping environmental policies, quote, at a time of economic crisis will hurt Canadians in the long run. How can you support a government that takes that position at this point vis-a-vis an economic crisis that you just mentioned?
Well, that was in the letter that I wrote in response to some of the oil and gas CEOs who had published a letter saying we needed to get rid of all of environmental regulation. And most importantly, the industrial carbon price, which most of those folks had actually only a year or two before been active supporters of. At the end of the day, the industrial carbon price is actually not just going to continue. It's actually going to be strengthened. And so I actually think that the government is making the right moves. It will need to continue to be ambitious, and there will be lots of folks like myself that are going to push them to continue to be ambitious. But this government believes in the science of climate change. It is taking action to address climate change. That's a heck of a lot more than you can say for the fellow across the aisle who can't even, bring himself to say that he believes in science anymore.
But that person isn't the Prime Minister. That person wasn't the former UN envoy on climate change. That party isn't in government, and it isn't the party for the last 10 years that told us we can't sacrifice the future of Canadians and their health through climate change for economic objectives.
Well, and I continue to believe that. I mean, look, I got into politics because of climate change. I am enormously concerned about climate change. It's a science issue. It shouldn't be a partisan or a political issue. We need to continue to take action. I think this government understands that very well, is taking action. Is it going to need to do more as we move forward? Almost certainly yes, but that's true of governments all around the world. And look, I mean, Mr. Carney's been very clear. Like, he has worked on climate issues for many years. If you've read his book, he certainly is committed to the fight against climate change. But it also has to be done right now in the context of what is a very challenging set of circumstances for Canada. So let's move forward, but let's be smart about it.
I have one final question for you on a separate issue. I'm not sure if you're prepared to answer. But prior to this interview, you've been written about on numerous occasions as possibly being appointed to be ambassador to the EU. Is there any truth to that?
Look, I have always said that I am interested in serving this country. After a long time in the business community, I got into politics for public service. I'm interested in doing what I can to advance the interests of Canada in the best way possible. At the present time, that's being the Member of Parliament for North Vancouver Capilano and working within the government to try to ensure that some of these issues continue to be on the radar screen. What happens in the future, I'm not going to speculate on.
So am I correct in reading that as not a hard no?
As I say, I am always interested in conversations about how I can make a contribution, and I will continue to, through the course of the rest of my working life, be interested in that.
Okay, I'll leave it on that note. Mr. Wilkinson, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
All right.